Shri Shashi Tharoor.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. This afternoon, we heard a powerful and statesmanlike speech from our Prime Minister. Not, as has just been alleged, a farewell speech, but a speech of taking stock of the platform that has been built for further progress. But I would like to refer, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to an earlier speech by our Prime Minister when he was not yet Prime Minister, when he said to this August House 20 years ago, in announcing the liberalisation of the Indian economy, in quoting Victor Hugo, that there is no power on earth that can stop an idea whose time has come. Today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have another such day when a powerful idea has reached us, the idea of an independent and effective anti-corruption body. The mood of the nation is clear, and I think everyone in this House will acknowledge that there is a reason why this is the first time after 8 previous unsuccessful attempts, the first time since 1968, that we are actually discussing the passage of a realistic bill, a realistic Lokpal bill. And I do want, I think in the name of many of us in this House, to congratulate all those inside and outside this House who have placed the issue on the agenda of the nation. They have done the nation a service in bringing this issue here. And I do believe that our government has done a great job in rising so admirably to the challenge of presenting a credible Lokpal bill to this House. As the Durban commitment to effective action against corruption declared in 1999, a commitment to which India is a signatory, corruption deepens poverty, debases human rights, degrades the environment, derails development, destroys confidence in democracy and the legitimacy of governments. This is why, Mr. Chairman, the time to act is overdue. And this is why we must commend the government for putting forward the bill that it has. Let us not underestimate the need for this bill. The fact is that people around the nation have been raising and discussing the issues that have come before us today, that there is a problem with the national debate, which is that we have seen outside this House that people around the country know what they are against, but do not know what those who are agitating were for. And so there was a simplistic attempt to support another bill, a bill drafted outside this House, which would have given us, I'm afraid, clear, all-encompassing but deeply wrong-headed and undemocratic prescriptions. The government has avoided that danger and has come forward with a bill that tackles the real problems facing the issue of corruption. Because corruption, Mr. Chairman, is not just the big-ticket corruption that everyone alluded to. It's not just the big headline corruption. It is not just the amounts that have put prominent figures in jail. It is the daily corruption that affects ordinary Indians that we must be concerned about. The widow who cannot claim her husband's pension or his insurance payout without bribing a clerk. The pregnant labouring class woman who cannot get the government bed that she's entitled to deliver her child in without bribing an orderly, otherwise she has to deliver on the floor. These are real cases, Mr. Chairman. The young man who wants to be a lorry driver but cannot get a driving licence without paying a bribe. Or worse still, the lorry driver who cannot drive properly but can get a licence by paying a bribe and becomes a menace to all of us. The son or daughter who goes to get a death certificate for a parent who has gone and who cannot get it without, again, paying a bribe. Shri Yashwant Sinha said we want a people-centric bill. These are the people on whom this bill is centred. If you want people-centric action, just yesterday, Transparency International, the Berlin-based organization, anti-corruption organization, released the results of a survey of 7,500 people conducted in South Asia over the last 2 years. 54% of Indians surveyed said they had paid a bribe. And according to the survey, Indians pay bribes frequently when dealing with all sorts of essential public services. The police, 64%, property and land, 63%, registry and permit services, 62%, tax revenue, 51%, and so the list goes on, even up to and including educational services. This is a shame for us, Mr. Chairman. We must tackle this firmly. And if Transparency International is seen as a foreign institution, let us look at the analysis released today, or very recently, beg your pardon, this week, by Azim Premji University in Bangalore that studied the last 10 years' performance of the Lokpal Lokayukta. What did they find? They found that 80% of the cases handled by the Lokpal Lokayukta are related to the 4 essential functions of government. Local government cases, 24%, administrative cases, 37.6%, welfare cases, 17.6%, and regulations, 2.5%. In other words, corruption infects our system and we must deal with it. It seems to me, Mr. Chairman, that the problem, however, was that while people knew what they were against, they did not know what they were for. They supported an outside bill without fully understanding the dangers that that bill posed. But they did all feel, and this nation as a whole feels, that the need for a strong anti-corruption agency which is effective and independent of government, so that any wrongdoings by public officials can be investigated, prosecuted and punished, is essential. That is what this bill gives us, Mr. Chairman. In my view, a good bill had to meet the following 5 principles, and I believe the government has done a very good job, as I will explain. The first, the bill must be conscious of its obligations to society and to our democratic institutions. This bill takes into account the demands of civil society, and at the same time, it is respectful of the democratic institution of Parliament, which is the only place where this law can indeed be passed. Secondly, it must ensure that the cure that is being prescribed is not worse than the disease. We had a cure being prescribed from outside that would have created a supra-institution, an institution that frankly would have been undemocratic fundamentally, that would have combined the police powers of investigation and arrest with the judicial powers of prosecution and punishment, all in one institution. It would have been extremely dangerous. This bill builds in effective checks and balances. The third principle is that a good bill must deal with the issues of monetary corruption and maladministration, of the misuse of authority for personal gain, and indeed the embezzlement of public funds. And you will find that the government's bill covers all of these and more. A fourth principle that's important is that the bill should strengthen our constitutional and institutional mechanisms in this country against corruption. The fact is, by proposing it as a constitutional amendment, the bill is anchored firmly in the need to strengthen our constitutional and institutional arrangements. And, Mr. Chairman, the fifth principle is that it should also be effective in avoiding the risk of decision-making paralysis. Shri Sharad Yadavji, for example, rightly said that most bureaucrats in this country are capable and honest. I don't think that we would demur with that. But there is always a danger that honest bureaucrats would be terrified by the provisions of too draconian a bill and would therefore not wish to act. That avoidance of risk would become the most important concern. There are many bureaucrats who believe that you can't be punished for doing nothing. And that is the worst thing for a country that is seeking to develop, to grow, to change. We must not create a situation in which bureaucrats are impelled to do nothing. We must make it possible for the honest to have fair and due process, and where honest officials don't feel the need to duck the responsibility to take initiatives and decisions. That, I believe, this bill has tried to do with the protections built into it. We will only know to what extent we have avoided the dangers by the actual working of the bill. And I think it's extremely important to see this bill as a stepping stone for larger, broader reforms, which I would like to return to briefly, Mr. Chairman, in a minute. But before doing so, I'd like to respond to some of the specific charges made by the opposition and some of the specific claims made by the opposition in this debate today. The fact is, what have we heard? Have we heard nitpicks? Yes. Have we heard legal sophistry, as the Prime Minister said? Yes. Have we heard a lot of rhetoric? Yes. But have we heard substance? No, Mr. Chairman. The only substance that I've been able to hear so far has been the Leader of the Opposition and the previous Speaker holding up the Uttarakhand Bill as a model of how such bills should be created. Well, Mr. Chairman, I have got hold of a copy of the Uttarakhand Lokayukta Bill, and I find there are some very interesting provisions in it, which I believe the House would be happy to learn about. For example, as you know, our bill proposes that one needs a 3/4 majority before the Prime Minister should be brought into the purview of a particular investigation. And the Leader of the Opposition has proposed an amendment that has been circulated to all of us, suggesting that should be reduced to 2/3. A 3/4 somehow weakens the authority of the Lokpal. What does Uttarakhand do, Mr. Chairman? Chapter 6, Clause 18 of the Uttarakhand Lokayukta Bill says that no investigation or prosecution shall be initiated against the Chief Minister, against any minister, or against any member of the Legislative Assembly without permission from a bench of all the members and the chairman. So they want 100% to indict a Chief Minister and MLA in Uttarakhand, and they think there are 75% is too much. There is more, Mr. Chairman. They tell us we are concerned about the impact of corruption on the BPL, not the IPL, sir. Mr. Chairman, the audit of the Lokayukta that is provided for in the Uttarakhand Bill is very interesting. According to Chapter 5 of the Uttarakhand Bill, Clause 14(2), it says that a committee of the Uttarakhand Legislative Assembly can do an annual appraisal of the functioning of the Lokayukta. So the Lokayukta there is under the Legislative Assembly, and yet the opposition that is holding this up as a model says that our Lokpal Bill, which is completely independent of Parliament and independent of the government, is weaker than the Uttarakhand Bill. Mr. Chairman, if this is their idea of a model bill, perhaps we can understand why they have no Lokayukta in Gujarat. For the last 8 years. So the fact is that the so-called model bill has. But you know, one of the dictionary definitions of a model is a small replica of the real thing. We have today the real thing, Mr. Chairman. Now, I'd like to speak about the discussion we heard on the UN Convention Against Corruption. I happen to know a little bit about that, and I won't enter into the territory of the legal experts who have debated the respective merits of Article 252 and Article 253 of the Constitution. My senior colleague, Minister Kapil Sibal, has made very clear that Article 253 does empower Parliament to enact a law for the whole or any part of the territory of India to implement an international treaty or convention. And this provision actually does override the list in the 7th schedule, because it's the exercise of our Parliament's constituent power. We're not just making a routine law. But I'll go beyond the legal issue because I'm not a lawyer. It seems to me, however, that corruption-free governance, Mr. Chairman, is a basic human right in India. It is, in fact, judicially recognized and enforceable, and in fact, the only way we can bring it about is by having a unified and comprehensive framework in which, at the national level, the state level, the local level, we can fight corruption in a united way. How can we pretend that it is appropriate to have one set of anti-corruption measures in Karnataka which is not applicable in Kerala? It is not possible, Mr. Chairman. When we offer this as a constitutional amendment, of course, what we are saying is that we cannot allow states to undermine the effectiveness of the law as it applies throughout our territory. Mr. Acharya was good enough to read out a particular part of the convention.